This is the Motorola Moto G67 Power Disassembly. If you're interested in seeing more videos like this, make sure you subscribe and click on the notification bell so you'll be notified once I upload a new video. Also, if you need any tools, there are links in the description. We'll start off by removing the SIM tray. Taking a look at the SIM tray, we can see a red rubber gasket around the opening. Now heat needs to be applied to the back plate using either a hairdryer or a heat gun to loosen up the adhesive underneath, and then a pry tool can be used to pry the back plate off. I prefer to use a hairdryer since there's less of a chance of damaging any of the components inside by overheating them. Here's a look at the vegan leather backplate. There are now 16 Phillips screws which need to be removed. Once the screws have been removed, a plastic pry tool needs to be placed in between the back housing and the frame of the screen and ran along the edges to pop off the catches. Once the back housing is loose from the frame, the flex cable for the fingerprint scanner is still attached to the main board, so that will need to be disconnected. Looking at the back housing, we can see that it's made of plastic. The camera lens covers can be replaced by applying heat and gently prying them off, so you don't have to take apart the phone to replace those. This is the flicker sensor located here, and the cover is made to look like another camera, but that's just for aesthetic purposes. The LED flash is located here, and there are two antenna flex cables. Now this variant, which is from India, does not have NFC, however if it did, the NFC antenna would be located here. Looking at the other side, we see additional antenna flex cables around the border, the LED flash board, as well as the flicker sensor board. Now that the back housing has been removed, we see two areas of graphite film. One which covers the shields over the motherboard as well as the battery, and another one which covers the lower section of the battery as well as the speaker assembly. And the graphite film helps to transfer heat. Underneath the graphite film on the motherboard, we see copper tape over the shields, behind the front-facing camera, and the earpiece speaker assembly. The battery cable can now be disconnected, followed by the rest of the cables. The coaxial cables on the bottom right side of the board can be disconnected by just popping them off. Looking at the main board, we see the 50 megapixel primary camera, which has a Sony Lydia 600 sensor, and the 8 megapixel ultra-wide lens. The camera connectors can be disconnected by just popping them off. There's also a secondary microphone on the top corner, and a liquid damage indicator sticker, which is that white sticker over there. Looking at the other side, we see the 32 megapixel front-facing camera, the proximity and ambient light sensor, as well as graphite film and thermal paste on the back shields to help transfer heat. Once the graphite film has been peeled back, we see more thermal paste on top of the RAM and Snapdragon 7S Gen 2 processor, and we see the SIM reader which is located here. Here's a better look with the thermal paste removed. This is the bottom speaker assembly. To remove the battery, there are no pull tabs or pull pouches to help you pry it off. So we need to apply some isopropyl alcohol around the edges of the battery and let it sit for about 30 seconds to a minute so it eats away at the adhesive underneath, making it easier to pry it off. This is the 7000 mAh battery, and this battery incorporates silicon carbon technology, which has a certain amount of silicon carbon in the battery anode. Once the battery has been removed, we can see the flex cable for the screen, which is routed to an opening in the midframe, as well as this flex cable which connects the main board to the subboard. So if you needed to replace the screen, you'd have to remove the back plate, the screws on the back housing, at which point you disconnect the battery cable and the screen cable and pry the battery off, giving you access to the screen cable, and then you'd heat up the front of the phone where the screen is to loosen up the adhesive underneath, pry the whole screen off, apply new adhesive and reapply the new screen, making sure you run the flex cable back to the opening in the midframe and reassemble the phone. Once those flex cables have been peeled back, we see a 3D layer of graphite which runs underneath the battery as well as the motherboard to help transfer heat. Looking at the subboard, we see rubber gaskets around the charger port and headphone jack, and the primary microphone is located underneath this covered shield. Looking at the other side, we see another liquid damage indicator sticker, which is that white sticker. The vibrator motor is located on the bottom corner, which is held down with some adhesive, so if you needed to replace that, just apply some heat and gently pry it off. The same goes for the earpiece speaker, which is located on top. And this flex cable is for the volume keys and power button. Now when it comes to this phone, if you were to accidentally insert a SIM ejector tool in the wrong hole, you wouldn't damage the microphones which are seated above the holes, but there are rubber gaskets and filters against the holes which would get damaged or pierced. For the repairability score on this phone, I give it a 6 out of 10. Now it's time to put the phone back together. Once everything's back in place, apply new adhesive and reapply the back cover. Flip over the phone, power it on, and you're done. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.